It's time for the news.
Hello there and welcome to the English program of Radio Alger International. First, the top stories of the news. 15 people died and 26 others were injured in the night from Sunday to Monday in forest fires that affected 3 wilayas of the northern Algeria, the Interior Ministry announced on Monday. The President of the Republic, Mr. Majid Tebboune, has sent a message of condolence to the Emir of the Brotherly State of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, following the death of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad bin Abdullah bin Jassim Al Thani. In his address to the International Conference on Development and Migration in Rome on Sunday, read out on his behalf by Prime Minister Ibn bin Abdurrahman, the President of the Republic, Mr. Majid Tebboune, affirmed that Algeria's approach to combating illegal migration was based on support for peace and security in countries experiencing an exodus of migration. Prime Minister Ibn bin Abdurrahman met Sunday in Rome with the President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Mrs. Giorgia Meloni, to whom he reaffirmed his firm will of Algeria to continue to work with her country. These are the major developments, and now the news in detail from Radio Alger International. This is Mohammed Barazwan reporting. First, in our news file, 15 people died and 26 others were injured in the night from Sunday to Monday in forest fires that affected 3 wilayas in northern Algeria, the Interior Ministry announced on Monday. In total, the country recorded 97 fires in 16 wilayas, but the most violent broke out in Bijaya, Bouira, and Jijal, killing 15, the ministry said in the statement. These fires, fanned by very strong wind, reached residential areas in these 3 wilayas, where 1,500 people there were threatened by the flames, were evacuated according to the same source. In other news, the President of the Republic, Mr. Majid Tebboune, has sent a message of condolence to the Emir of the Brotherly State of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, following the death of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad bin Abdullah bin Jassim Al Thani. In this painful ordeal, I present to you and to his honorable children, to the entire Al Thani family, and to the brotherly Qatar people, in my own name, on behalf of the Algerian people, my sincere condolences and my deep feelings of compassion, President Tebboune wrote in his message. In his address to the International Conference on Development and Migration in Rome on Sunday, read out on his behalf by Prime Minister Ibn bin Abdurrahman, the President of the Republic, Mr. Majid Tebboune, affirmed that Algeria's approach to combating illegal migration was based on support for peace and security in countries experiencing an exodus of migration, while calling on the countries to mobilize more funding for the implementation of development projects and reintegration according to a well-defined timetable. Said Bouazi has more in this report.
President Tebboune highlighted in his speech Algeria's extreme interest in the issue of illegal migration, particularly in terms of its close correlation with development and the challenges and problems of this scourge which need to be addressed. He also pointed out that the Rome meeting takes place against a backdrop marked by the worsening of illegal migration in our region, with all the challenges and recurring tragic scenes that this situation poses. All this is due to a series of factors whose effects are known to all, headed by structural dysfunctions in the development approach of several countries, added to wars, conflicts, the spread of hotbeds of tension, insecurity, the growth of the terrorism scourge, cross-border crime, climate change, as well as the deterioration of the socio-economic situation, he continued. As for Algeria, thanks to its geostrategic position, its recent economic development, and the stability that characterizes it, it has changed from a country of transit to a country that receives and settles migrants from Sahel-Saharan countries and certain conflict zones in African and Arab countries, he said. This situation has worsened as a result of security measures and provisions to protect the European Union's external borders and tighten visa-granting procedures, continued the head of state. However, Algeria, driven by its permanent solidarity with neighboring countries, has for many years adopted a relatively tolerant policy towards these flows, which has led to an unprecedented rise in the number of illegal migrants who have settled on its territory, with all that such a phenomenon can engender in terms of repercussions at various levels. In view of all this, the President of the Republic warned that this phenomenon would take on even greater proportions in the future if the necessary measures were not taken and implemented in time. In this respect, he noted that the security approach to migration, although it meets the urgent need to maintain public order and combat the networks of smugglers and human traffickers, does not contribute to addressing this phenomenon in a sustainable way. It is therefore imperative to consider global solutions that guarantee stability, stimulate the development momentum, and create employment opportunities for young people in the countries of origin in order to curb the phenomenon of illegal migration, he underlined. President Tebboune therefore called for North-South cooperation to be elevated to a higher level in order to provide aid and assistance to the countries of the South by increasing development contributions made to them.
Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman affirmed Sunday from Rome the determination of Algeria to continue its support to the African states concerned by illegal migration by creating development projects there as materialized in Mali, Niger, and Mauritania, able to contribute to reduction of this phenomenon, which impacts both the countries of origin and the host countries of the migratory flows. In a statement to the press on the sidelines of his participation in the International Conference on Development and Migration organized by Italy, Ayman bin Abdulrahman indicated that he represented the President of the Republic, Mr. Ahmadji Tebboune, at this event, which constitutes a new opportunity to review the Algerian approach to illegal migration. Still in the news, Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman met Sunday in Rome with the President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Mrs. Giorgia Meloni, to whom reaffirmed the firm will of Algeria to continue to work with her country for the consolidation of bilateral cooperation and the promotion of economic exchanges and investment between the two friendly countries. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman held talks in Rome on Sunday with the President of the Lebanese Council of Ministers, Najib Mikati, on the sidelines of his participation as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Ahmadji Tebboune, in the International Conference on Development and Migration, with the two parties affirming their common will to revitalize bilateral cooperation mechanisms. The two sides also affirmed their shared desire to work together to promote economic exchanges between the two brotherly countries. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Abdel Hafid Hani, is to start from today a 3-day working visit to Rome, Italy, to take part in the first UN-level meeting at the headquarters of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, devoted to the assessment of food systems, said statement from the ministry. Still in the news, the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army ANP, Army General Seycen Griha, began Sunday a working visit to the 2nd Military Region in Iran as part of the inspection visits of the various military regions, the Ministry of National Defense said in a press release. During a meeting with executives and personnel of the 2nd Military Region, the Army General Said Changriha delivered a keynote speech which was followed via video conference by all units of the region, in which he urged the personnel of the ANP and through them all the loyal and national children to step up efforts and demonstrate more performances in order to achieve the noble national objectives committed by the President of the Republic, indicated the press release. In other news, Senator Fouzia Benbadis, a member of the commission in charge of the Middle East question at the Inter-Parliamentary Union, IPU, has reaffirmed Algeria's unchanging position on the Palestinian cause and the imperative to protect its people and the holy places against Zionist aggression. Ahmad Takjout has been elected new Secretary General of the General Union of Algerian Workers, UGTA, for a 5-year term, replacing Hamou Touahriya, who had been acting Secretary General since last March. In the Western Sahara file, the Sahrawi National Human Rights Commission, CONASAD, has expressed its strongest condemnation of the continuing criminal practice and atrocities of the Moroccan occupation forces against the Sahrawis, notably human rights activists. Said Bouazi has the details in this report.
CONASAD expressed its solidarity with the Sahrawi militant, condemned the barbaric attack he suffered in the occupied city of Dakhla, and held the Moroccan state legally and criminally responsible for its acts and all murders committed over more than 4 decades of illegal occupation of Sahrawi territory. The Sahrawi National Commission for Human Rights has moreover called for the opening of a fair and impartial international investigation to determine the causes of the aggression and bring to justice the perpetrators of this crime. On Saturday, the Soleil de la Liberté Association for the Protection of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders expressed its extreme concern at the increase in attacks against Sahrawi activists and human rights activists in the occupied parts of Western Sahara, particularly attempts at physical liquidation targeting anyone who tries to denounce violations by Moroccan officials. In this connection, the Sahrawi Association also denounced the attempt on the life of Sahrawi human rights defender and journalist Rachid Esghir in the occupied town of Dakhla. It should be noted that the Moroccan regime continues to disperse peaceful demonstrations in occupied Sahrawi towns and to restrict the activities of Sahrawi human rights organizations. It has also stepped up repression against Sahrawi activists, unleashing a frenzied campaign of persecution and harassment of Sahrawi human rights defenders and their families.
In the burning Palestinian file, the Palestinian Commission in charge of detainees and former detainees affairs has called on human rights organizations to intervene immediately to put an end to the daily violations and harassment against 28 Palestinian women prisoners in a Zionist jail. More details with Said Bouazi in this report.
A number of the detainees have been visited by the Commission's lawyer. The latter explained that the situation of the detainees is worsening and becoming more complicated, in particular the psychological state of a number of them, noting that no action had been taken by the prison administration to take care of the most vulnerable prisoners. According to the Commission, the demands of women prisoners are met with indifference on the part of the prison administration. In all, 28 Palestinian women are imprisoned in the Ad-Damoun prison, according to the Commission, in addition to 2 women detained in the so-called clinic in Ramla prison and 2 women detained in Abu Kabir, bringing the total number of women detained to 32. In another development in the occupied West Bank, 4 Palestinians were injured by live bullets fired by Zionist occupation soldiers during a raid this morning of Nur Shams refugee camp camp in the northern West Bank city of Tulkaram, and 9 others were injured by shrapnel, according to the Ministry of Health and local sources, and more than a dozen Palestinians were detained by the occupation forces during raids into several areas of the occupied West Bank. A large army force accompanied by a bulldozer broke into Nur Shams refugee camp at dawn after imposing a tight closure on it and proceeded to raid a house in the camp where the forces detained a 28-year-old former prisoner. The occupation forces also raided and searched a mosque and several other houses in the camp. The Zionist occupation army also caused heavy damage to roads in the camp and infrastructure, mainly the water, electricity and sewage networks, according to Taha Irani, head of Nur Shams Services Council.
You are still tuned to Radio Alger International. I invite you to listen to the second part of our edition with 2 timely broadcasts on schedule. I wish you swell listening.
Hi and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Public Works and Basic Infrastructure, Taha Derbel, has announced in Jijel that the project to build a 45-kilometer motorway link between the port of Janjan in Jijel and El Ulma in Setif would be resumed. In a statement on the sidelines of a work and inspection visit to the province of Jijel, Mr. Derbel said that he had been mandated by the Minister of the sector to announce that once all the obstacles hindering the pace of work had been removed, work had resumed in the provinces of Jijel, Mila and Setif. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohamed Abdel Hafid Hanni, has said in Algiers that the services of his ministry will shortly begin implementing measures in preparation for the new agricultural season, notably concerning the protection of agricultural activities against various risks. In statements to the press at the Council of the Nation on the sidelines of the closing of the 2022-2023 Ordinary Parliamentary Session, Mohamed Abdel Hafid Hanni said that measures will be taken as soon as possible in addition to the previous measures applied to launch the next agricultural season in the best possible conditions. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohamed Abdel Hafid Hanni, has chaired a coordination meeting to monitor the sector's files, including the prevention and fight against forest fires and the harvest threshing campaign, according to a ministry press release. In this connection, the minister affirmed that the state of maximum alert and the mobilization of all personnel under the General Directorate of Forests remained in place as part of the permanent activation of the National Plan for the Prevention and Control of Forest Fires, the press release stated. In more Algerian economic news, the Minister of Housing, Urban Planning and the City, Mohamed Tarek Belaribi, has held talks with his Chinese counterpart, Ni Yong, in Beijing. These talks took place on the sidelines of the state visit paid by the President of the Republic to the People's Republic of China at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. During these talks, the two parties agreed to strengthen cooperation and exchange expertise in the sector of housing, urban planning and the city. Algeria has fished its entire annual bluefin tuna quota allocated by the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, ICCAT, according to a press release from the Ministry of Fisheries and Fish Productions. Algeria's live bluefin tuna quota for 2023 has increased by 368 tons compared with 2022, or 22.23%. The live bluefin tuna fishing season consisted of 17 successful operations carried out from 3rd June 2023 to 11th July 2023, the fishing deadline having been extended by 10 days with the agreement of ICCAT to compensate for the days when activity was halted due to bad weather, the ministry pointed out. The The Minister of Fisheries and Fish Productions, Ahmed Badani, has announced that a new digital card for professionals in the sector will be operational from September as part of efforts to simplify administrative procedures and achieve digital transformation in the fisheries sector. In an interview with Algerian radio channel 1, Ahmed Badani said that the digital card will enable fishermen and the various players in the fisheries sector to benefit from a range of electronic services, notably the remote collection of administrative documents via a platform without having to travel, given the nature of the work of fishermen who spend a large part of their time at sea. And to wrap it up, the Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arkab, has said from Beijing that current economic indicators are making Algeria an important market and strategic country for investors, describing Algerian-Chinese energy and mining relations as privileged and exemplary. Algeria has adopted a series of measures aimed at achieving strategic objectives, adapting investment benefits, and improving the business climate to attract foreign capital with technology and experience, explained the minister. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Goodbye.